Hello everybody, good morning and welcome here to Acts Community Church. My name is Rob Jones and I'm one of the leaders here. I want to extend a warm welcome to you if you're tuning in to our online messages. I'm really excited about today because today we begin a new series together as week by week we'll consider and study together some of the titles and names of God that we find in the Bible, which I'm sure will be a great encouragement, a blessing, and a help to all of us. So thank you for tuning in, and we're going to start today with one of the names and titles of God that I love so much. We're going to be considering the Lord, the Rock today. Now, knowing God has been described as the greatest treasure that the human heart can ever discover. How can we, as ordinary human beings, even begin to know the one who is eternal? And in the Bible, we have a collection of books written by 40 different authors over some 2,000 years. And it's punctuated by many different names and titles that people have attributed to God through history. So what we have in the Bible is God being revealed to the world of men through a variety of different names and titles which reflect different aspects of his character and his personality. And we can learn so much about the God we love and God we worship as we consider together some of these names and titles. And as I said, over these next few weeks, as we look at some of these names and titles of God, let's be praying. And I pray this today, that the Holy Spirit will bring us into fresh revelation and understanding of who God is and what God is like. So let me begin then by bringing our attention to this title of God, the Lord our Rock. The prophet Isaiah says this: "Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord is the rock eternal." What a great title this is for God. The one who is the rock. The image, of course, is of one who is great, immovable, and totally dependable. Now, even as far back as Genesis, the first book in the Bible, when Jacob, the patriarch, is speaking blessings over his sons, he invokes the blessing of God as the rock over the life of Joseph. And how Joseph would need to remember and hold on to that truth in the trials that lay ahead of him in the years to come. And when we are in the midst of uncertainty, when we are facing unsettled circumstances, much as we are today, that's when we need to know him as the Lord our rock. When everything else is falling apart, and we feel that which we have stood on and relied on for so long is no longer able to be relied on, that's when we need to know him as the Lord our rock. And if ever there was a time in our lives when we need to know him as the Lord our rock, I believe that time is now. In the middle of these difficult and uncertain days that we're living in, knowing God as our rock is going to help us withstand the storm that we are currently going through. We can trust him, says Isaiah. Many of us on this call today, we could, I'm sure, tell our own personal stories of times in our lives when we have known him as our rock, when he has proved himself dependable, trustworthy, immovable, great in our lives. I know I certainly can. The one we can depend on, the rock of ages, the rock that doesn't roll. It's in the day of trouble that we find him to be our rock. Now, fast forward a little bit in the Bible towards the days of King David. And King David knew the Lord as his rock. See, there was a time in his life when even his own son, Absalom, was looking to kill him. There was a time in his life when Saul, the king, was trying to kill him. There was a time in David's life when his newborn baby died. There was a time in his life when his best friend Jonathan was killed at an early age. And also his much loved son Absalom was also killed, much to David's deep sorrow. He was a man who knew a lot of grief throughout his life. And during one of these difficult seasons, we get something of an insight into David's attitude of trust in God as his rock through difficult days. Of course, we know David wrote many of the Psalms, and one in particular I think is helpful here. In Psalm 61, some of the words that David writes there reveal what made him such a great man before God and such a great king to the nation. And he writes these words: "When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." What lovely words. What a great phrase. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. There will be times in all our lives when we feel that our heart is being overwhelmed, especially in the days we are living through right now. Sorrow, bereavement, fear, illness, disappointment, divorce, poverty. These are all part of our human experience in our broken and our fallen world. But when these things come into our lives, we need to know our way to the rock that is higher than we are. We need to know how to find refuge in God, how to run into his strong tower, how to live under the shelter of his wings. That's when we find him to be the Lord, our rock. It's in the difficulties. It's in the tough days. It's in those seasons, those times that are hard to go through, that we find God is our rock. And this theme, the Lord as the rock, it was a constant theme in the worship songs of the Old Testament. Here's a line from some of those worship songs in the Old Testament. "For who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock except our God?" And this phrase, just as I've read it to you right there, that appears a number of times throughout the Old Testament as it became a form of words that everybody knew and used in their worship. Who is God besides the Lord? And who is the rock except our God? Beautiful phrase, extolling and worshipping the Lord as the rock, the dependable one. And another phrase that focused on God as the rock also appears regularly in Old Testament worship, and it goes something like this: "The Lord lives, praise be to my rock, exalted be my God, the rock, my Savior." You see, this was earthed in the life of God's people, that God is the rock, the one who is great, who is immovable, who is totally dependable. Some years ago, Gaynor and I visited Gibraltar on a number of occasions to help train church leaders there. And if any of you have been to Gibraltar, you know that it's just a great big rock on the southern tip of Spain, where currently some 35,000 people live. I know, it's remarkable. It's a rock that's higher than I am. And when we were there, as I was looking at this rock and thinking just how huge it was, I heard God whisper into my heart that if I could see how much of the Rock of Gibraltar was underground, I would be totally amazed. I was only looking with these eyes at what I could see, and I was impressed, amazed at its size. And he whispered into my heart, but if you could see how much of that rock is underground, you'd get a much truer perspective of the size of the Rock of Gibraltar. And then I believe he said something like this to me. He said, no matter how much of him I would come to see in this life, no matter how much of him I would come to understand of him as I study and worship and pray and seek God in this life, when I get to see him as he really is in eternity, I would be totally amazed. What a time that'll be. And you know, I think some of you listening today, you need to know him as your rock. I tell you this, you can absolutely depend on him as your defender, your redeemer, and your refuge. One of my favorite worship songs over many years now has been a song called Faithful One. And here are the words which I think speak so powerfully into our situation today. And I sing them often during this season of isolation. I pick up my guitar and I like to spend a little bit of time just playing and worshiping. And this song I often sing and worship with in these days, these months, this year of isolation. Listen to these wonderful words addressing God. Faithful One, so unchanging. Ageless One, you're my rock of peace. Lord of all, I depend on you. I call out to you again and again. You are my rock in times of trouble. You lift me up when I fall down. All through the storm, your love is the anchor. My hope is in you alone. Those are great words. Yeah, how I wish I'd written that song. What a wonderful, beautiful song of worship, focusing the heart and mind on God as the rock. You're my rock of peace. You are my rock in times of trouble. Now, one of the psalm writers sums up today's message with these words. He says this, the Lord has become my fortress, and my God, the rock in whom I take refuge. You know, it runs right throughout the worship songs and the worship life of the Old Testament. God as the rock. And how that helps us today in our walk as believers, as we look to God for refuge, for that dependability and that immovability that he is. So I want to say this to you, make him your rock today. Come into the safety and the protection that he brings over the lives of those who trust him and who love him. Trust in him today as the one who is great, the one who is immovable, the one who is totally dependable. But let's finish our brief study of God as the rock here today on a note of high praise and worship as written by the psalm writers many, many years ago. Here's what they said. Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving. Let us extol him with music and song. I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. My shield, my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. My prayer for all of us today, if you're tuning in, listening to this, is just this, that you would know God as the rock of your life today and in the days ahead. I pray that you will know his strength and his protection and his love over your life. And that you, with us, with the psalmists, and with many saints across many centuries, will be able to have this testimony in our lives. The Lord is my rock in whom I trust. The Lord bless you. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.